Electric vehicles are extremely popular today, and I've had mine for over 5 years and loved it. But I hear a lot of people come up with reasons it's actually not a good idea to buy one and you'll regret it.
And honestly, there are some valid reasons why you wouldn't want to buy one.
So the first and really the biggest reason, in my opinion, is if you're not able to charge your car where you live.
If you don't have one of these where you live, it's just going to be way more hassle than it's worth. Trust me, I did it for a year and I would not go back to that lifestyle.
So when I lived in Seattle, I lived in a building that didn't have a charger and I relied on supercharging. And let me tell you, it kind of felt like my life revolved around charging the car because I was only charging it usually to like 180 miles, which would last 3 to 5 days. I just felt like I was always having to think about when I was going to charge it, and it was pretty annoying.
And even if the place you currently have has an EV charger, it does limit your options if you ever want to move. Like right now I live in a new construction building that installed EV chargers, but I'm looking to move and I keep finding places that I love, but they don't have an EV charger, or all the EV charging spots are taken. In Los Angeles, a lot of buildings are adding them. All the new construction buildings have them.
In fact, new construction apartment buildings have to add them. They're actually required to add EV charging to a certain number of parking spaces.
But I've toured a lot of older buildings that have a lot of charm and are super cute. They even have a carport that has power to it, but they've told me that you can't plug into that outlet because they need to upgrade the electrical panel, and a lot of landlords just don't want to do that. Because to upgrade an electrical panel, that can be like $5,000. So unless you know you only want to live in new construction buildings, or you own a house so you know you're going to have an EV charger installed, I think it makes sense to be a little hesitant because it will limit your options if you want to move. You're not going to want to live somewhere that doesn't have an EV charger. It's really annoying.
But on the flip side, if you are able to install a charger, it's actually way more convenient than going to a gas station. So in that case, I'd really recommend an EV.
The next reason is if you go on road trips regularly, like once a month or more, that are over 350 miles in range. So the reason I say that is because if you're going on road trips that are under 350 miles, you're not even going to have to stop and charge, and it's no different than driving any other car in that case. But if you're going on a road trip over 350 miles in a brand new that has a 360 mile range, you're gonna have to stop to charge at least one time.
It does depend on the car though and how much range you have. Like mine's a little older. I only really have like 220 miles of range. So let's say I was regularly driving from LA to Vegas. Well, that would be really annoying because it's 270 miles away. So it's just above the amount of range I have, where I would have to stop to charge every time, which would add another like 30 minutes to the trip.
And you want to make sure you have more than enough. So if you're going on a road trip that's 200 miles away, you want to have like 240 miles of range to make that trip. You want to have a little buffer in case you're going uphill or it's cold and you lose some range due to that. And if you're making road trips often, like once a month or more, that's going to be pretty annoying. You're probably going to wish you didn't buy an electric car, actually. Now, if you're only doing road trips a couple times a year, it's really not a big deal. I've road tripped literally from Seattle to LA and stopped to charge 5 times. And honestly, it's really not that bad because you do it like, what, 1 time a year? Not that bad. In a lot of ways, I actually like it better because I have autopilot, so the road trip is a lot less stressful.
The next reason a lot of people point to is that EVs have a bad resale value.
So I actually think this is kind of a dumb reason to not buy an EV because literally every car loses value. I think it's a good reason to not buy a brand new EV because I do think the new ones lose a lot more value. But again, that's true of any car. And this one is actually more of a myth that I wanted to bring up because I just don't think it's that true. If you look at the Kelley Blue Book value of a 2019 Tesla or entry-level BMW or Audi, actually the Tesla has a little bit higher of a resale value.
This is over the last 5 years. The gas cars depreciated about 50%, while the EV was only about 35%.
I think it depends on how much range you still have. The ones that depreciate the most, honestly, are like the Nissan Leaf, the Chevy Bolt, the ones that don't have a lot of range or have outdated technology. We see those ones depreciate a lot more than other cars because no one wants them. They're just not really that functional anymore. Cars are just depreciating assets. I don't think that's that good of a reason to not buy an EV.
The next reason it might not be the best idea is if you live in a state that has high electricity costs.
So at worst, it could actually be more expensive to charge. Right now, that's basically only Hawaii. Hawaii has such expensive electricity that gas is actually cheaper, and you would probably spend more having to charge, especially if you're relying on supercharging. Now, pretty much every other state in America, electricity is still cheaper, but in some states it's very minimal. Like California, you really only save $9 every time you fill up
an EV.
But some states like Washington State, electricity is so cheap and gas is pretty expensive, so you actually save a lot by having an electric car. It kind of just depends on where you live. There are maps of this, you can Google it based on your state. Also, I'll say if you're relying on supercharging, you are going to pay a little bit more. Like in LA, it's 50 cents a kilowatt hour.
And if you buy an EV that's not actually that aerodynamic, like the Hummer EV, it has this huge battery. This would probably just be more expensive than gas. So it depends what car you're getting, how efficient it is, and also the electricity rates where you live.
Another reason people cite to not buy an electric car is that it's actually not that good for the environment when you consider all the resources it takes to mine for that lithium-ion battery. Yeah, when you look into it, this is kind of a valid reason.
The truth is, owning an EV is not the most sustainable option like a lot of people think. The actual most sustainable option is not owning a car at all, walking, taking public transit, or using an e-bike.
Unfortunately, this is really hard to do in a lot of US cities. It would be pretty tough in LA. But if you live in a European city where you don't really need a car and you're considering getting an electric one, but you're concerned about the environment, if you can walk and take public transport, that's going to be way better for the environment overall. LA, we're getting more of that infrastructure here, but it's still not totally there.
There's a movement towards e-bikes. I think they're a pretty good alternative. You can even get these little trailer things so that you can bring your groceries around. Still, most places it's not really feasible, but if it is for you, it's a good sustainable option.
Now, this reason, it's kind of valid, it's kind of not. Because an EV is still a better option than a gas car.
The way that they mine the lithium, though, for the batteries does cause water depletion, contamination. It degrades the land. It's not great for the environment overall. And some studies have found that it's so harmful to mine for these batteries that it doesn't make up for the reduced emissions of the EV.
It's not as good as just not owning a car at all, which I don't hear a lot of people talk about because, frankly, it's just not practical in a lot of places. But if you can swing it, if you can go without owning a car, it's definitely better than owning one in terms of environmental friendliness. The biggest valid reason for not getting an EV is if you just live somewhere where you can't charge it. When people ask me if they should get one and they tell me that, I say no. It's just too annoying. It's too much of a hassle. You can always get one later, but honestly, you probably will regret it in that case. Maybe if you live super close to a supercharger and you get one that has like 400 miles of range, you might be okay. But if you have one like mine that has 200 miles, it's so annoying. I just wouldn't recommend it. One last thing I want to say is there are a lot of different EVs out there. I know in the past I've really only talked about Tesla, but I've tried a lot of them now. I've tried the BMW EVs, I've tried the Hummer, I've tried VinFast, Rivian. A lot of them are good. Now that the superchargers are opened up to different brands, I actually do recommend checking out different brands. And there are some that have some autonomous driving features as well. Like I know the GM cars have Super Cruise and it's pretty good. It's pretty similar to autopilot. So if you don't want to support Elon, because I know that's a growing group of people, you don't have to buy a Tesla. You could buy a used one because that doesn't really make the Tesla any more money. Or you could buy an EV from a different brand because there are some good options out there. All right, that's gonna be it for this video. Let me know if there's any reasons that I missed that you wouldn't buy an EV, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.